Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So it seems like this war is escalating and it's going global. The Iran-backed Houthi forces has fully just announced the other day that they have fully entered the U.S.-Israeli war, and they are going to help Iran. What they're going to do is they're going to choke off both the Red Sea corridor and the Strait of Hormuz. That alone would just turn a regional conflict into just a global economic shock with high odds of recession. They're going to spike. Energy prices are going to spike, and a very rough ride for stocks, not just stocks in the United States, but stocks worldwide. And these guys are no joke, guys. Let me just going to get and share some of that with you just to show you guys exactly which choke point I'm talking about here and why this is so significant. So this is the Yemen. So this is exactly where the Houthis are controlling right over here. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit on this for you guys, so you show you exactly what I'm talking about. So this choke point right here, this is a very, very vital choke point. That means that this right here, and all these countries, African countries and Egypt, all of this right here, they use this shipping lane to ship things out to Europe, to Asia, and so on. So now you have a double whammy, a double choke point. So you have Iran choking off right over here. This is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran control that. All these countries here, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, none of these countries can move anything out of this region here because Iran is blocking that and they're choking that off. And now what was happening before is Saudi Arabia and some of these countries were using this section here to ship oil. So I said, listen, oh, we can't ship through this section here. We're going to go the back way and we're going to come down this way and ship, ship oil, gas, or whatever it is, goods and services out to the open sea. Well, now the Yemenis, the Houthis has joined this war, and they're going to go ahead and close off this choke point right here. Zoom in a little bit. They're going to choke this point right here. So all oil from any of these countries here, they're not going anywhere. So in other words, these guys are completely screwed because the Houthis are not having it. They're going to block all that stuff. So this is going to send major shockwaves, and not just the stocks and also just the world economy. Again, this is not going to be the end of the world, but it will likely lead to higher inflation and is going to slow growth in the world economy. Now, the question is, who are these guys? Who are the Houthis? And these guys, I mean, they are an armed movement group. They are based in northern Yemen. They are long backed, trained, and supplied by Iran Islamic Revolutionary Guard. I mean, these guys been at war with the United States. I mean, they had like almost an 8-year, almost a 10-year war with Saudi Arabia. I mean, these guys are tough as nails. Geographical location is also a defense. I mean, there is a very desert place, mountain regions, hard to get to. It's almost like Afghanistan. The topography of their country is very similar to Afghanistan, except that these guys have missiles, they have drones, they have hypersonic missiles, and they are ruthless fighters. So that's who these guys are. Because since 2023, they have used all of that stuff, drones, anti-ship ballistic missiles. They have hit or threatened ships in the Northern Sea. I mean, they have even boarded ships and have taken them over as well. So these guys are very capable and they've done it before. They have effectively shut down the Bab el Mandab choke point. They have turned that whole thing into a danger zone for many Western linked vessels. And also, too, earlier, I believe last year, they also had it. They did the same thing, but they were targeting Israeli specific vessels. Well, these guys are very capable, and they can do some damage. U.S. last year, Donald Trump sent a battle group over there, and they bombed over 1,000 sites in Yemen to stop them from launching missiles and stopping ships from going through that strait. And that didn't do anything. They still kept firing missiles, and they continue to stop ships from going through there. So I'm just trying to paint a picture to give you guys an idea of who these guys are and what does this mean. Now, the question is, why the Red Sea? Why does it matter? Because every country in that region, plus the Suez Canal, that whole region there is one of the world's main trade highways. Roughly 12 to 15% of all global trade and about 30% of containers traffic normally move through that system. The Red Sea route also carries significant volumes of oil and refined products each day. Any disruption has already led to major diversion and cost spikes when attacks intensify. The Strait of Hormuz is even more critical for energy. Around 20 million barrels per day of crude and petroleum products move through it. In 2024, about one fifth of global oil used and over one quarter of all seaborne oil trade, plus a big share of LNG, the liquefied natural gas export, especially from Qatar to Asia. What happens if both choke points are effectively closed? Think of this as basically a dual choke point scenario. Iran squeezes Hormuz, and the Houthis squeeze the Bab el Mandab in the Red Sea Strait. Analysts warn that if Hormuz stays shut and the Houthis resume or intensify large scale attacks like they were doing a year ago or 2, 3 years ago, that's going to scare off a lot of traffic, just like Iran is did. You don't have to have a huge navy or military to block that strait. All you have to do is hit a few ships and set them on fire. Insurance companies are going to get spooked. No one is going to want to go to that strait anymore because now you've just turned that whole region into a danger zone. And no ship that is carrying billions of dollars of goods and services and crude or whatever they're carrying is going to put their ship, their crew member, and their product at risk to go through that strait and possibly getting blown up. So you're going to find an alternative route. So, and this happened before. This, for the first time in history, where you would have where the Houthis control shut off, and also then you're going to have the other strait where the Iranians control shut off. We've never had this before. This never happened. There's an estimate, economists are estimating that combined disruption could directly or indirectly affect roughly 28% of global oil trade, pushing Brent crude way above $100. I believe today was about 110. It kind of went back down. I think it closed like 107, 108. But by the end of this week, that thing is going to keep moving in the upward trajectory. So this thing is not going to stop anytime soon. Some analysts just call this, if this closure remains, if it's a sustained closure, this is not a maybe or we think so or do we think this is going to happen. This is going to be a guaranteed global recession. Beyond the oil shock, this thing would hit everything between container shipping, grain, fertilizers. That's the other thing no one is talking about. The UN has already warned that this, because it's causing delays and food and grain, a lot of countries in Africa, a lot of vulnerable countries and poorer economies are going to suffer with famine. There is a warning of famine, world hunger, because grains are not getting to countries that need it, and then also too, most importantly, fertilizers and also manufactured goods. If they can't get to those straits, they have to go all the way around the whole Africa. They have to go around the Cape of Good Hope, all the way down to southern Africa near Cape Town, and then come all the way back around. Just that trip alone is going to add between 10 to 15 days to many voyages. It's going to cost billions of dollars in extra fuel and insurance. If the fuel is already expensive at over $100 a barrel, imagine what it's going to cost these ships to also pay those extra money for those fuels to even increase their route by 15 more days. And imagine what insurance is going to cost just in case these ships might get hit by the Houthis. So this is a major deal. Now you may be asking yourself, well, who cares? All this stuff is happening in the Middle East, is happening and just between Iran. This is the Yemenis. What does that have to do with me? How does that affect me as an everyday American? How does that affect me as a consumer? Well, for the US, and I've heard this said the other day, Donald Trump says, well, we don't use the oil that comes from this whole section here. We have our own oil and we produce our own stuff. So we don't care what the rest of the world use. We're just going to pack up and go. You guys, he threatened Europe and said, you guys want this open? You guys come here and open it yourself. Well, the problem with that is if that oil is not getting to countries because we don't produce anything in this country anymore, we lost a lot of our manufacturing. So that means the oil and the gas that come from that region goes to Asian countries and poorer countries that manufacture a lot of our stuff, like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and different things like that. So if those countries cannot get the oil that they need, that means they cannot run their factories. If they cannot run their factories, they cannot make goods, and make goods they can't sell to us. So you see how we're all connected into this? You see the evolution of all this? Because if they can't make those goods and if they can't make those things, that means they can't sell it to us. That means that we have to go get it from somewhere else. That means the prices for those goods and services are going to be a lot higher. But the US, the damage come through in prices, basically, and in confidence in global demand, not just physical shortages. Higher oil and energy prices would quickly show up as more expensive gasoline. Also, too, the LNG, a lot of that stuff that goes to Europe, they're going to be in big trouble. But this thing is going to show up in many different ways. Diesel, jet fuel. Oh, you want to go on vacation that summer vacation, or springtime's about to hit. We're in April. People like to travel around this time. Yeah, well, flights are going to be a lot more expensive. Heating, more expensive. Electricity. One research estimate that if the oil price is $100, just $100, not 110, not 120, that is going to add almost 1%, 1 percentage point to global inflation. That kind of energy shock forced central banks, including the Federal Reserve, to choose between fighting renewed inflation, meaning raise higher rates or increase rates, or do they want to support growth? Then they have to cut rates. And the Fed is in a particular tough position right now because now if you have inflation, the inflation is being caused because of this war. So if you have inflation, typically what you want to do, you want to raise interest rates because then you have to try to save the dollar and balance out everything. So if you have high inflation, that means you have to raise rates. And if we get into a recession, you want to lower rates. But if inflation stay high, if inflation starts to go up, the Fed cannot raise rates because that's going to affect a lot of businesses. We already have a sluggish economy. Employment is not as high. If you do that, if you raise interest rate because inflation is going up, then you're going to make the situation worse. Companies won't be able to borrow. You're going to cause a bank crisis. Now, if you cut rates, you're going to devalue the dollar. We're at $39 trillion in national debt. If you cut the rates in a situation like this, the national debt is going to skyrocket. You're going to lose control of the currency. You're going to debase the currency. So the Fed is basically stuck. There's not much they can do. Recently, Fed Chairman Powell just gave a press conference. I think the Fed's going to keep the rates exactly where they are because they don't want to raise it because we can't deal with high interest rates. These companies won't last, especially weak companies. They won't last with high interest rates. And we can't cut them neither because that will devalue the dollar. So you see what the problem the Feds are facing right now is going to cause a lot of uncertainty in borrowing costs if the Fed acts. So that's why they're like, oh, we're not going to do anything. We're going to sit back and wait and see what happens. The thing is also, too, is going to cause rates is going to continue to go up. That means imported goods, delays is going to be, we're going to experience delays in parts and components. It can disrupt U.S. manufacturing, supply chain, the little bit of manufacturing that we have, especially in auto machinery and consumer electronic. If this whole closure between the Hormuz and where the Houthis, the El Mandab Strait, if the Asian economy and the European economy takes a severe hit, U.S. exporters from industrial to agricultural and services, they're going to face weaker demand. And this whole thing is going to have a major drag on U.S. growth, even if domestic energy production cushions some of the blow. We may start producing, release more oil to try to soften the blow. But if these countries are facing recession, this is why the euro is more expensive than the dollar. That means they can buy some of our stuff. Now, if they're facing a recession, if they can't buy anything, now who's going to buy the little bit of manufacturing that we make? Because no one can afford it. Everyone is in trouble. So this is why this thing is global. This is not the Houthis entering this. This is not a small thing. This is a calculated long-term strategy to make this war very painful, not just for the United States, but also for the world. And also, what does that mean for the United States? It means Americans, everyday Americans. Americans will likely see higher fuel prices. Fuel is going to be more expensive. To fill up your car is going to be more expensive. Good prices are going to rise again. And there's been talks about a stagflation and a growing recession risk if this crisis lasts more than a few weeks or months. And like I've said before in my last video, I don't think this thing is going to we're not going to be able to get rid of this thing right away. This thing is going to be something that's going to last for sure for a couple more months, unless, Donald Trump just raises his hand, said, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to wash my hand of this and I'm out of there. And he can't do that. As I explained before in my last video, that if he does that, then he'll just basically forfeit the Strait of Hormuz to the Iranians. There are now that has turned that strait into a toll booth that are charging countries to pass through not to US dollar, but to the yuan. I believe the only way out of this is probably to negotiation because we can't keep this thing going any longer. Markets would react right now. Markets are reacting in phases. First is the panic, and then they're going to reprice everything, and then they're going to adapt to the situation. You know, they're going to try to do some adaptation if the situation stabilizes. Sectors that rely heavily on shipping and imported goods, like retailers, auto industry, semiconductors, and some consumer goods, would likely sell off sharply on margin pressure. They're going to call margin because the stocks and the prices of those things are going to continue to go down. If higher energy costs and uncertainty push the global economy into a downturn, corporate earnings will fall, default will rise on weaker companies, and risk assets can stay under pressure for extended period of time. Now, what does this mean for the wider world? The biggest pain in a dual choke point crisis hits the more fragile economies first. Major energy importers in Europe and Asia would face higher fuel costs and potential shortages, with poor import dependent countries struggling the most to pay for energy and food when prices spike. Countries that rely on Suez and Red Sea routes for export, including in Africa and the Middle East, will lose revenue. Food import states in Northern Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia are exposed because grain and fertilizer shipments could also they also use these routes. Higher prices and delays raise the risk of social unrest where budgets and households are already stretched. You're probably gonna see protests. They've been also having some protests in some of these Arab countries. Well, you're gonna see more of that as the economy as you get a downturn economy, people get more frustrated. Things are already expensive. They're gonna blame the government. So things are moving. Things are gonna be happening over there in that section of the world. If energy prices shoot up and stay high and shipping stays disrupted, global growth could slow enough to tip multiple regions into recession all at the same time, raising debt stress in emerging markets and forcing the IMF and big creditors to step in more often. Now, so that is going to be all for today, guys. Let me know what you think. Do you think that the Houthis are not going to be as effective? Do you think we're going to get out of this in the using diplomacy? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you like this video, please share and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you soon.